Hello and welcome. Today we are going to discuss about AWS Identity Access Management Service. So we will be focusing on preparation for AWS IAM service for CLF, SAA and Developer Associate exam and many more. So let's start with the overview of IAM service. As its name suggests, IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. It is a service that controls who can access your AWS resources and what actions they can perform, and it is managing authentication verification of who you are and authorization what you are allowed to do on the resources. For example, when you create a user named Dave and assign permissions to Dave can only access to EC2 service, not S3, not RDS. So then I am in action securing your cloud environment through precise access control that allows particular user Dave only accessing EC2 service. That's how it is fine-grained access control and foundational for AWS security and compliance. What are IAM identities? IAM supports different identity types. Those are number one, user, number two, group, number three, IAM role, and fourth one is IAM identity center. What is a IAM user? A named individual with the login credential is nothing but IAM user. It can be a person or a service. Each user has long-term credentials like passwords and access keys. What is a IAM group? It is a way to assign the same permissions to n number of users. So logical grouping of users that makes it easier to manage permissions across multiple users. What is a IAM role? It is an identity assumed temporarily by a trusted service or external identity. So it is a temporary identity assumed by trusted entities like EC2 service, Lambda, or federated users. And the fourth one, what is IAM Identity Center? IAM Identity Center AWS's SSO platform that simplifies managing large organizations. So it is a modern solution for managing workforce identities, supporting single sign-on and external identity providers. Let's move to IAM policies. Policies are nothing but documents written in format JSON that define, allow and deny permissions. So we have policies are JSON document that define, allow or deny permission on AWS resources. These are identity-based policies are attached to users, groups or roles. Resources based policies are embedded within AWS resources like S3 buckets and Lambda functions. We have permissions boundaries that are set the max permissions a user or a role can get. So the next one is session policies are temporary and can restrict permissions when a role is assumed. So these are used to apply only when a role is assumed. For example, you attach a policy to an IAM role that allows only S3 list bucket and S3 get object for one specific bucket, ensuring users can't modify or delete files. So that is how IAM policies are defined. Let's move to the next section. IAM access control mechanisms. So IAM access control mechanism is nothing but controlling methods which includes the principle of least privilege means users should only have the permissions needed to do their job. So this is least privilege, that is to grant only what is absolutely required. ABAC, attribute based access control, uses tags to create dynamic policies based on user or resource attributes. So this uses tags to dynamically control access. RBAC, role based access control, that assigns access based on a job function. So role based access control is for specific job functions. Conditions allow policies to be more secure. For example, enforcing MFA or allowing access only from specific IP address or specific times. So adding restrictions like IP addresses MFA or time via access control mechanisms. Let's move to the next section, which is very important. IAM federation and identity sources. So IAM supports federation, allowing users from outside AWS, examples, corporate logins, to access AWS resources using temporary credentials. So it is important to remember federation allows outside AWS to access all the resources using temporary credentials. So whenever it is required, so federation is available. SAML 2.0 is used for integrating with Active Directory or enterprise SSO providers. OIDC works with social logins like Google or Facebook. Federated users assume roles in AWS and get temporary credentials. Let's take an example of your company uses Azure AD for internal logins. You configure a SAML provider in IAM so employees can log in into the AWS console without creating separate IAM users. That's about federation. next important and the very asked questions from MFA and security best practices. So as we have seen before, MFA is nothing but multi-factor authentication, which adds a second layer of security for IAM and root users. So the best practices of MFA and security includes enabling MFA for root and privileged IAM users, rotating successful login with access keys every 90 days, using roles instead of embedding credentials in applications. So by avoiding using root user for everyday tasks, it has unrestricted access to the account, rotating access keys every 90 days to mitigate risk from key exposure, and use IAM roles instead of embedding credentials into application code are the very crucial best practices. Let's move to the next important topic, IAM access analyzer and monitoring. So IAM access analyzer scans policies and identifies resources shared outside the account. For this, CloudTrail tracks and logs all IAM actions for auditing and forensic investigations. Credentials reports help access. So credential reports help assess the usage of IAM credentials like passwords and access keys. AWS config tracks changes to IAM policies and roles for compliance. For example, you discover via access analyzer that an S3 bucket is publicly accessible. So you will be knowing that you need to fix it by adjusting the bucket policy. So that is how monitoring analyzer is helpful in AWS. So I am with other AWS services. IAM integrates deeply with other services. So IAM roles are used by EC2, Lambda, and other AWS services to access them securely. Service linked roles are created and managed by AWS for specific services. Example, ECS and RDS. Cross service communication like Lambda accessing S3 that uses IAM roles and trust policies. Permissions boundaries help manage access control when delegating permissions. So EC2 can assume a role to access DynamoDB. Lambda can use a role to write logs to CloudWatch. Likewise, service linked roles are created and managed automatically by service like ECS. So a generic example like your Lambda function needs to read from an S3 bucket, assign it a role with S3 get object, permissions and bucket ARN, no credentials required, which will enable Lambda function to read S3 bucket objects. So that's about IAM services working with other AWS service. Let's move to next section, that is the focused areas on exam preparation. So for certification success, we will need to focus on key concepts of AWS identity and access management. So we have to understand when to use users, when to use groups, and when to use roles depending on the scenario. Know how to write and interpret IAM policies, including statements, actions, and resources. So for that, we need to be very handy with reading, writing JSON based IAM policies. So understanding evaluation logic, especially how to explicitly deny, overrides, allow. And then using tools like the policy simulator to test access scenarios is very important. For example, let us take a question that might be coming from the section as part of your certification exam. Which IAM identity is best for an EC2 instance needing temporary S3 access? So they're asking which temporary S3 access from a EC2 instance. So if you can guess, it is nothing but a IAM role. So if you want to read through more topics, we can continue in the further videos. I'll be helping you clarify the IAM service and how it is working with other services. So you can drop a comment for the topics to continue in the next video, particularly on the focused areas in AWS services. Don't forget to subscribe for more AWS certification content and flashcard based study documents. So you can comment if you need more details on these particular topics. You can even download the aids from the website link provided in the description. Thank you for watching.